Well, howdy. So I finally remembered to bring a used clutch and flywheel set. I don't typically reuse the used stuff, and I probably will end up ordering a clutch kit for it anyway. But I'll pull this apart and see where we are. It looks like the pressure plate is more or less fully extended, which is not ideal. However, when I clamp it down, there's actually a fair bit of clamping left. So we'll see. I mean, this is a $600 car. Reusing a self-adjusting does take a significant amount of usable clutch life out, but it probably doesn't matter for this guy. So yeah, I'm going to start ripping off the under trays and start working on the exhaust. I'm not sure if that'll be easy or difficult considering the state of it and how most of the hardware is just gone. I'm going to hit that with PB Blaster before I even start, but yeah, the nuts are literally missing, so that's not a great sign. I might end up trying to find some V-band flanges to weld on there, or just literally welding it on, because if somebody has to work on it again, they're probably going to have to cut it off anyway. But anyway, the main panel down here is just Phillips screws and 8mm, so we'll get going with that. I'm betting if I hit that with a hammer, it would just fall off, because there's nothing holding this on anymore. That top nut is barely there, and that's the only thing with any structure left on it. I don't know why this piece of crap isn't focusing. There we go. Yeah, everything else is actually literally completely gone. Hopefully there's enough of these studs left, or I can actually just ramrod something on there. But we'll see. I don't know. This was one of those cases where it was so far gone that just hitting it enough was enough. So I'm actually pretty happy with that. I think I'll be able to clean these up enough to run a nut on them and chase the threads. I don't know. But yeah, I'll start pulling the exhaust. The front drive shaft luckily feels good. That's usually a big problem on these. The hardware is looking pretty crunchy. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Might break some of that, but we'll get her done. I think there's just enough of those flanges left where I did order new gaskets. I think they'll survive, and I don't see holes in the rest of the system. So there's just a little vacuum line on the back. All the studs survived, although the heat shield is not doing well. So yep, central heat shield next. Then I'll drop the back of the trans and pull the rear drive shaft, and then front drive shaft. And then I can't remember, but I think I have to pull this brace off too. No, I don't. That's actually the subframe. So it's going to be a little hard to clear the trans off with that thing there. I've actually never done a clutch on an XI before because I don't usually work on these. But yeah, a bunch of 10s for these. I got 18s on the trans flex coupling. And then we got E12s back here on the rear drive shaft. And the front drive shaft's all E12. So we'll get cracking. So next up, pulling the transfer case off. Looks like it's a bunch of E-Torques, E12s. So zip those off, get the hydraulic trans jack underneath it. But in order to gain access to like the shifter clips and all the bell housing bolts, it's much easier. So first thing I'm gonna do is get this breather off though, because that will get in the way. But yeah, we're looking okay. Well, here we are. The access is still a lot worse than it is on a rear-wheel drive car. Still gonna have to pull off that shifter stuff. And ideally I'd like to pull the engine down a little bit more, but we're getting there certainly. Obviously this lave cylinder still has to come out. Looks like it still has a clutch delay valve, so I gotta remove that. Reverse lights. Might as well just do that now. Looks like this has not been running well given the exhaust leak. Lambda's definitely been thrown off. Bank 1's definitely running leaner than Bank 2. Yeah, the XIs have 2 shifter clips, not 1, and it'll be fun to get this whole assembly out. Shifter's real big. The front diff, I'm noticing, has got a pretty appalling amount of lash in it. So I'm gonna fill it with heavyweight shockproof hypoid oil, but yikes, definitely getting rid of this car in the spring. I don't really want to have to change the front diff. Not super fun on these. The pan gasket's obviously leaking, don't really care. Most of the oil, though, I think is coming from the oil filter housing gasket, which I may as well replace. Pretty easy. But yeah, it's just slave cylinder, bell housing bolts at this point. And then we'll get this enormous transmission off. I hate all-wheel drive. Oh yeah, transfer case. Rear mounts, pretty toast. They all are. Doesn't really matter too much. We'll wear out the rear drive shaft a little quicker, but it's not the end of the world. Everything else looks pretty okay. This is a new venture, new process NP80, I think. These are pretty weak, but same thing they used in the X5s, so it's plenty strong for this whole thing. Same thing with the trans. It's a ZF 325. The only configuration of the 325 that came with the beefy trans was the all-wheel drive, so yeah. Fun. Yay. Yippee. So I stand by. XIs suck. Just everything's a little bit harder to get to. The clutch definitely toast. You can see the fibers everywhere. Beyond that, I did have to hit the starter with my pry bar from the backside just to get it to release. But trans is out. Quite a bit of clutch dust. See, my glove is doing well. The release bearing looks like it's been flattened a little bit. Spring's okay. Fork's okay. A lot of residual dust hanging around, but doesn't look like any permanent damage, which is super nice. So time to rip this off and see how bad it is. So the flywheel looks pretty bad. Pilot bearing looks okay. Luckily, yeah, all the friction material came off the gearbox side. So pressure plate roasted, but there was still friction material on the flywheel side. So there may be some hope for that flywheel yet. But yeah, this is, that's pretty glossy. Looks like it's been sitting a while too. But that's not brilliant. All right, let's see what I've got in the other clutch set. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go home and look and see if I have a better one, because this is pretty much shot too. The flywheel looks a little bit better. No hot spot, well, fewer hot spots, but the disc and the pressure plate look terrible. Not even sure what this is out of, but definitely not putting that in the car. So I forgot to shoot it, unfortunately, but the new clutch set is in. Turns out I had one in my basement already for the M54 B25. That went in just fine. Transmission's back in. I still have to put in the 3 lower bell housing bolts, but I decided since it's hanging down, I would go through and do the fluid in it. The both plugs were just in as hard as could be, so it's never been touched before. Typically I do a 2/3 Redline MTL, 1/3 D4 ATF mix in these. On this trans, I'm just going to be going straight ATF because that's what they call for, and I don't really care about it that much. I'm also going to be putting heavyweight shockproof in the front diff, and then 7590 GL5 in the rear diff, and the transfer case. This is not an X-Drive, so you can put GL5 in these. The X-Drive cars run a GL4 because they have clutches and stuff. Then I'm going to do the brake and clutch fluid too, because why not? I still have to delete the CDV anyway. But yeah, sorry, the videos may be sparse, but I'm going to keep cranking on this. I'd love to have it a driving car at the end of the day. I'm still kind of trying to figure out what to do on the studs here too. They're intact, but I don't even know if I can cut new threads on those. So I might try to pound them out. Otherwise, I may have to ghetto rig it and, clamp it and weld it. But we'll figure it out. I do have new gaskets, and it should be a lot better than before either way. But that's the status. I'm going to fill this now. Fluids are always super boring because it takes so long to pump it in. But oh, and I have stub axles. So the right front looks perfect. There's no way in hell I'm doing that. But the left front needs replacement, so I'm going to go ahead and swap that out. I had forgotten that E46s were this way too. I just did the fluids on... Oh, no, they're not. Okay, we're good. We have a drain plug. Finally, the F-chassis cars get rid of this. I don't even know if the E90s still have it either, but loosen the fill plug first always. So I've got that loose. And we'll go for the other. This is a... let's see, it's a 14. Yep, 14 millimeter Allen. So all good. I'll get my bucket out. Get the rear diff done. Main reason I'm starting with the rear is my pump, which is actually just a modified Motive power bleeder. They work great, by the way, for that. Is full of regular high-grade gear oil, and I'm running heavyweight shockproof on the front diff because it's a hypoid gear set. So I'm going to use up the rest of the good stuff back here, and then in the transfer case, if I still have more, and then we'll go for the hypoid stuff up front. So the front differential actually didn't look as bad as I thought it would, which is a great sign. A little bit on the golden brown, darker brown side, but still very clear. Rear diff looked brand new. However, the transfer case fluid is disgusting. So by far the smallest amount of fluid between the three devices, so I guess that makes a little bit of sense. But I'm going to wait for it to fully dry out here. And then we'll fill this up with heavyweight shockproof as well. So most things are back in place. As I was bolting the front drive shaft in, I realized that the front diff is actually in great shape. And although the boots are not torn on this side, this axle is actually shot. It's got tons of end play in it. And this one does too. Of course, the boot's shot. So I will be replacing the pair of those. And I also realized... that's pretty bad. So I have to get a control arm and bushing for this side. Other side's good. I do have rear shocks for it. I do have front struts for it. However, apparently I left the struts in a box in my work office for some reason. I was noticing it's got some parts writing on one of the springs. So I don't actually know if it has a broken spring right now. Obviously it did at some point because all E46s do. But yeah, at least the fluids are done, minus brake and clutch. This is getting more solid by the day. If I threw a drive shaft in it right now, it would drive, which is pretty great. But I don't think I really want to set it down and get it out of the way until it's fully ready. So that will mean ordering more parts. I guess we'll just come back to it. Well, I have no idea what sort of bimpo chimpo axles these were, but the circlips are completely bent over, and this one is not even here anymore, so maybe that's still in the diff somewhere. But anyway, I've got some new, I guess these are EPWI axles, I don't know. These are similarly cheap, I'm sure, but they've been steadily improving. And the outer CV is actually quite a bit larger diameter now. That's kind of like E53 X5 size. So these are beefy axles. Yeah, I guess I'll ramrod these in. I hate all-wheel drive. So stupid. Yeah, this ball joint. I have a new control arm on order, but that is truly, truly terrifying. Somebody was driving this car legally on the road before I bought it. So that's pretty neat. Like I said, it's that, the control arm, and then figuring out how to reattach the exhaust in a positive manner, given how screwed the studs look. I think I have a dye kit here, so I may try to tap and dye those down, but we'll see. Not the biggest issue we've got to face, and for the most part, the car has come together pretty well. All of the fluids are now done, and it's looking pretty good other than just the tremendous safety flaws. So again, I already had both axles. I'm glad I ordered them all at this point because, yeah, they were both pretty bad. Whew. Well, that kind of sucked to get the old one out, but we will stab the new one in and hope for the best. Soapy water, mainly soap. You want something that's kind of dry. Oil's a bad idea. So that's the plan. Whew, sorry, out of breath. So we got her, even with the original bushing, which actually doesn't look too bad. Bolt it all back together, and then I'll start working on the exhaust. Might actually be able to test drive this thing today. So shiny. Oh, whoop, looks like I lost a guide pin cap on the ground here. Oh, hate all-wheel drive, But all back together. I did get the top stud really well attached. I'm guessing we'll have an exhaust leak, but I'm going to pull it down and test drive it now to see if it needs the suspension stuff I bought or not, because I've never driven this car. And I'm sure it'll be back on the lift here before I'm done with it. So anyway, I just want to see if the clutch is working okay. And then I have to remember to do the oil filter stand gasket because that thing is just hemorrhaging. Wow. The transmission has 5th gear lean now, and it didn't before. Still a little bit of an exhaust leak. Not terrible, though. And it moves. Let's open the door. I have to adjust the wipers. They're up way too far. They definitely need adjustment, but I don't think it's up too far. Try to get some of the rust off these brakes. So far, the suspension doesn't feel like it needs anything, so let's get it out onto the open road and see what's what. Yeah, it does not need struts or shocks. It actually feels very, very tight. I'll check the airbag code. I'm not sure what that is, especially because this is clearly a brand new Takata replacement bag. I don't know. It drives pretty okay for an XI. Let's go ahead and weld them on. Now changing the engine oil. It looks like it needed it. While I'm doing that, I am planning to change out again the oil filter housing stand gasket. That is going to be topside, but before I fill it up, that's the plan. Nothing else under here looks terribly amiss. The car drove for an XI very well. I'd say that blue beater wagon I had last year drove equivalently well. But that was an automatic. So this car, it's just better. So this should be a great pull run vehicle. I'm excited. I have a factory aux-in cable and a Bluetooth module for it. I did install a dash cam, just some creature comforts that we've never had before on a rally. So should be good. That's been leaking for a while. And I can see from here that the water pump has been done once, which is nice. So I'm going to leave that. But yeah, this was really disgusting. I'm going to mop that up as best I can, just with some towels and stuff, and then throw a new one in there. But yeah, it's pretty gross. That's been leaking for a long time. So this thing is, I think, good enough to go home and sit on the street, which is nice. I'll have to actually see. I don't normally run front license plates, but my state does require it. So for street parking in front of my house, I will have to figure out what's going on there. The LSB is back over there just for one quick job. That's going to be engine mounts. Both of the lower studs broke on those disgusting original mounts, and they had 200K anyway, so may as well replace them. So probably not going to do that today. You never know. But I'm going to go have a beer right now. Thanks for watching, guys.